Well, welcome to the recording for audio engineering, and we're in week 3. You can see that week 3 runs from April 15th to the 21st, so it goes from Monday through the following Sunday. And in week 3, we're getting into the sections of the course. So if I scroll down on the left, you'll see how the course is divided into sections. Now, week 3 is going to be most of section 1, then week 4 is going to be wrapping up section 1, and then week 5 will be section 2, etc. So in week 3, you can see that you're going to, of course, watch this recording, do the Class Connect write-up, and within each section has a lesson. So there will be 6 lessons that you'll go through in the course presentation. Now, the course presentation is different from this recording. The course presentation is what is set up in the course. It's similar to last week. In week 2, you're to go through the course overview presentation. Well, in each week, you'll have a section presentation, like this one's called Section 1. We'll go through that today. Now, on the work for the week, you can see that there is study questions you do, then you have the quiz, and then a couple of assignments. On the study questions, you'll answer questions for each of these lessons that are part of the presentation. So what you'll want to do is have the study questions open as you go through the presentation on your own, so then you can answer the questions. And I'll show you how those things work. So here we are first, and if we go to the study questions for section 1, you can see that it wants you to copy and paste into a Word document. So what you would do is just highlight all these study questions, right-click, copy, paste into a word processor. Then as you watch the presentation on your own, you answer the questions, answer these study questions, then you turn it in. Like they say right here, you could turn it in as that name, that would be fine. So study 1 and then your first initial and your last name, and that way I know who it belongs to. So that's how you end up doing this work. And we're going to go ahead into the presentation. So I'm clicking right here on section 1. We're going to go all the way through this presentation. And before we do it, of course, we want to look at the Class Connect write-up. So in section 1, in lesson 1, what does an audio engineer do? What are 2 ways to tell that your sound is too loud through your headphones? So those are a couple of things you want to keep in mind. So in this section, you're going to learn about sound waves, waveforms, use Audacity a couple of times, and reduce noise to clean up an audio file, etc. So we're going through the course presentation. You can see right here, this talks about an audio engineer. An audio engineer records sound, changes sounds to listenable format, or something that people want to play back later. And you see the different things that a sound recorder, sound engineer might do. So this slide talks about sound. So you can see sound is happening around you all the time. When you hear a sound, the sound is caused by vibrating molecules in the air. So you want to make sure you read through all of these, and that's where you'll find your answers to the study questions. Oops. So they throw these practice questions in every once in a while to see if you can answer those. Speakers, this talks about how a speaker works. So that's part of the study question. So you want to make sure, again, you have those study questions open in a word processor, and then you answer them as you go through the presentation. Different parts of the speaker. So it's made up of copper coils, the speaker that vibrates, and then there's a magnet on it. So this is all about how a speaker works to magnify sound. Another practice activity. Headphones, so they just have little speakers in them. That's really what headphones work. So headphones are good for two things. They're good for listening to music when you don't want to bother other people. Also, they drown out other noises. Now, listening to headphones too loudly. One way or two ways to find out if your headphones their sound is too loud. If somebody else can hear what you're listening to, when you're listening to your headphones, and somebody else can hear what you're listening to, that means they're too loud. If you have to take your headphones off to hear somebody talking to you, the headphones are too loud. So those are two ways to tell if your headphones are too loud. Now test your sound. So here you want to test your sound in your computer. So what you'll do is you just right click arrows to test your sound. Now waves are energy, and sound travels in sound waves. So of course make sure you read through that. Now it starts talking about sound waves itself. Waveforms. Waveforms is what a sound looks like. So you can see this is a sound right down here with all this waves. So you can look at different parts of it. So there's the timeline of the sound. There's the peaks and the troughs. There's the loudness of the sound. So you can see what all those different parts of a waveform are. Loudness, so it talks about the difference between what loudness is, and something can be loud if it's uncomfortable, but loudness is subjective. What is loudness for one person may not be loud for another. So you can play these and see which ones you think are loud and which are not. So volume is a specific control. So of course that's what's different from loudness. So loudness is relative, volume is actual. Volume is how far you set up the control, the volume control. So that's all about lesson 1. We went through all these 6 items, talked about lesson 1. So you not only found the answer to a couple of Class Connect write-up questions, but you also found answers to some study questions. So we did this. What does an engineer do? We look at that. 1 or 2 ways to tell your sound is too loud through your headphones. We looked at that. Now lesson 2, we're going to look at what is amplitude, and you know how to start Audacity. So now we're going to get into Audacity, the software program you'll use. And so the first thing we look at, amplitude, is the measurement of how loud a sound actually is. Not the volume or how loud people think it is, but how loud it actually is. That's the amplitude. Now decibels is how you tell the amplitude of a sound. So if I click right here, the decibels of that sound, I can turn it down and up. Quiet guitar, then here's a loud guitar. That down and up. So that's the amplitude in decibels. And you see the decibels are important. Decibels is how we rate sound, and too many decibels, and that's going to really hurt you. So just practice on this. Do the little practice here that they have. See what you know. Sine wave tones. You can see that that's pure sound, a single frequency. So click that. You'll see that that sound has no variations. It's just a single clear sound. So practice, then click the buttons to listen to them, and then figure out which one is a sine wave sound tone. Audacity is the program we use in this class to work on sound. You're going to open it next Now you ought to have it set up on your computer already. If you don't have it set up, then you need to go back to the course overview presentation in the home area. Go to the course overview presentation. Go to the table of contents. Go down to right here, choose your browser. If you have Internet Explorer, choose there, and you'll download the course resources. Now I'll go ahead and show you what it looks like when you get those things downloaded. You should have done that before. So here's my audio engineering class. You see that I have a resources folder. It originally came in zipped, and then I unzipped it. So if I go to resources, here's the Audacity program to start Audacity. So you need to get that done to install Audacity. So let's go back to our section 1 presentation. And of course now I can use the table of contents because I want to go all the way up into part 2. So right here, open Audacity. So you're going to follow these directions to open Audacity. And now you're going to use Audacity to manipulate some sounds, to listen to some files, things like that. So I open Audacity. All the directions are right down here. It shows you exactly how to use it, how to do this sound wave activity. It shows you exactly how to do it. It tells you exactly how Audacity works. There's the pause, the play, the stop button on the control toolbar. That's going to have you play a sound again. So work through this. Follow all the steps that they have in the demonstration down below. Undo and redo commands. To remove a waveform. So this again is just walking you through the basics of using Audacity. Follow all those steps. Generating other tones. Oops. Generate other tones. The zoom tool makes it easier to see the parts of the sound. How to use the zoom tool. So again, they're going to have you go through that. Then you close Audacity. So there are different ways you can close Audacity. So that's lesson 2. So we finished up with that and go back to the write-up. Of course, in lesson 2, amplitude we looked at. And you know how to start Audacity. That's going to be a yes or no question. Okay, lesson 3, what are audio tracks? What does the time shift tool allow you to do? So now we're getting into lesson 3. When two sounds happen at the same time, their sound waves combine. So you can see right here it's talking about multiple sounds. Like if you have a vocalist and a guitarist playing at the same time, or a drummer. Now the phase of the waveform is where the wave is in its cycle. So you can see this is the phases of the waveform. So here you want to go through, click the part of the cycle at 0 degrees. So you go through and you just do this practice on your own to see what you know. Add a tone. So they want you to start Audacity. So they give you the directions on how to do that. You're going to generate a tone. So you're going to practice with Audacity. Now audio tracks, or just called tracks, these are separate parts of an Audacity project. So this you can see there's 1, 2, 3 audio tracks. So that's one of the Class Connect write-up questions. What is an audio track? Duplicate command, of course that would make an exact copy of something. So you could copy different tracks. In phase waves, These are waves that are in phase, meaning they're identical, they're perfectly lined up with one another. What this is right here, click the main play button in the lower left to play them at once. So I can play that sound at the same time. And they're identical waves, so you're not going to hear much difference. Duplicating a track. Again, the steps are down at the bottom. So you need to practice with Audacity as you go through all this. Inverting waves. So this is where you take one wave and invert it. And you can see down here when two waves are exactly inverted from one another, they cancel each other out. So then you have silence. So now they're going to have you invert some waves. The time shift tool lets you move a track back and forth along a timeline. This is important when you're using a couple of sound tracks at the same time. Shifting the phase. You can move a phase cycle along the way. Partial phase angle waves. Sounds kind of complicated, doesn't it? Two waves that have been shifted. So practice this. Which image shows a partial phase angle wave? If you don't know the answer, then hit your back arrow to go back to see what those diagrams show. Now you're going to make a partial phase angle wave. Now saving files. Now when you're doing your work in Audacity, when you start to do some actual recording, you're going to make sure you save. And when you save Audacity, it saves in two parts. It saves in a data folder, and it saves the actual file called an AUP file. That's an Audacity file. You're going to need to keep these things in mind, because when you create files that you want people to hear, you have to export them into a certain type of a sound file. So the files that you create automatically with Audacity when you save are just for that project you're working on. But they aren't true sound files. They're still files that can be used in Audacity, but you'll see that a little bit later on. So here's going to have you save a project. So go through the project save activity, save it correctly. Check your work, make sure the phase tones project file has 2 tones. So make sure you do all those steps. So here's what we did in lesson 3. We did all these 6 things, learned how to do those. So now we're going into lesson 4. But let's go back to the Class Connect write-up questions. And in lesson 3, did we learn what audio tracks were? Yes, we talked about that. What does time shift allow you to do? We talked about that, didn't we? Okay, lesson 4, difference between frequency and pitch and looping audio. So now we're into lesson 4. So frequency, that's the exact measure of how quickly a waveform cycle repeats itself. So remember the word frequency, like if I say you are frequently, excuse me, you're frequently on time with your work, or you frequently come to the live class connects, that means often. So frequency is how quickly the waveform repeats, or the cycle repeats, and pitch is how high or how low the sound is. So there's the frequency. So that's the difference between frequency and pitch. Oops. Now here's going to have you start creating some tones. So you're going to make a 440 hertz tone using Audacity. Musical notes are expressions of a sound's pitch. And many of you might have some musical backgrounds, so you can understand how musical notes work. Octave, that's the highest, the next highest or next lowest that have the same name. So you can click on the difference between those. 1 octave down, 1 octave up. So you can hear the difference between octaves. the same note. Here's a little bit of practice, so go through that, see what you know. Make higher or lower octaves. So you want to go down here and make sure you follow these directions. Again, using Audacity, just like a sound engineer would use a program. Now, looping audio, this is something that plays continually without end. So that just right, it keeps going. It has no end. So that's what looping audio is. Now they're going to have you loop that sound you were just working with. So I think you see how the class works. They want you to know what something is, and then you practice doing it. Mute, of course, is turn off a sounds track so you can't hear it. Solo lets you listen to one track at a time. This is really important for engineers because they can listen to the guitar, or they can listen to the drum, or they can listen to the vocals. Those could all be different tracks. So practice this a little bit. Again, do all the practices, see what you know. Now they're going to have you do some muting and solo on some tracks. Save a project. So you're going to complete these steps to save the 3 octave tones that you worked on. So make sure you save it as they say. So this you're going to save as the word octaves. So make sure you save with the name that they say. That way when you go throughout the class, you'll know what files they're talking about. 2 types of waveforms, simple and complex. So you can play these to see the difference between those waveforms. Harmonics is musical, the sounds played by instruments. What makes them pleasant or unpleasant. So listen to these sound files. Of course, what could be pleasant to one person might not be pleasant to another. So it's subjective. More about tones, so fundamental tones, partial tones. So just play through these things with all this about. So just a little bit of practice. Check your work. The octaves project file. Make sure the 3 octaves are the same tone. So you're doing all those things that they're telling you to do. So in lesson 4, we did all of this, looped audio, solo and mute, etc. in lesson 4. Now let's go back and look at the write-up for lesson 4. Difference between frequency and pitch we talked about. Also talked about what looping audio is, right? In lesson 5, what is noise? What does the selection tool allow you to do? So now we're going to go into lesson 5 in the presentation. In lesson 5, noise is the unwanted sound in a recording. Noise can be echoes in your room, it can be badly set up recording equipment, or hums in. So that's a babbling brook. Here's a classroom. So you can hear different noises, right? And noise has colors. There's something called white noise. You can read about that. You can play this. And then there's something called pink noise. So you can see how they try to determine what types of noise, what they are, and give them names. So practice. So click the play button to hear each of the 4 sounds, and click the button beneath the sound that has the most noise. So again, it's one of those practice activities that they want you to do. Now you're going to create some noise using Audacity. So work through those steps like you have been doing. And now you're going to import a file. So you can delete some tracks. You go to File, Import, and click Audio. So do these steps exactly as it says, and things will work out great. Now what you're going to do, you have some files that have already been set up. So if you go back to your course folder where you did your downloads before, your Audacity downloads and everything, if I go to Audio Engineering, Resources, here's section 1. You can see that there's a file there called Remove Noise. So you're going to have those folders, those things in the folders set up for you. Now you probably have these other files already because you did some of that octaves work early on. So now you're going to, So now you're going to go ahead and remove noise. You're going to work on that. And the selection tool. So the selection tool lets you click and drag to select a part of a wave. So you can see that this is selecting part of the wave from this point up to this point. It's going to take this part of the wave out. And now they're going to have you actually select part of the wave. Noise reduction. That's to remove the noise. You can see that that's always at the decibel level. Now you're going to actually remove noise. So again, they tell you what you're going to do, then they tell you how to do it. Here's Save the Project. Make sure you save with what it tells you to save and save it in the right place. Check all of your work. And that's all for 5. So generate a white and pink noise, remove noise from an audio track. So now if we go back to the Class Connect write-up, in Lesson 5, working with sound, what is noise? We looked at that. What does selection tool let you do? Selection tool, we looked at that, right? Okay, finally, Lesson 6, which part of the ear is most important? This is going to be in your opinion. Explain how loud sounds damage the hearing nerves. So we're almost finished with this. So Lesson 6, now we're going to talk about the health and safety dealing with sounds. So listening to sound too long can hurt your ears and lead to hearing loss. So the human ear, it has all these different parts. What I'd like you to do, just read about the different parts. And then that one Class Connect write-up question said, in your opinion, which is the most important and why? So read about all of those. That's going to be then you're going to answer that. Okay, sound in your ears. So some ways that you can lose sound. Being around loud noises cause temporary or permanent damage to the hearing nerves. Louder noise than it is when it hits the ear, the more intense the waves and the fluid of the inner ear move. And when it's too loud, those violent waves, that can hurt the hearing nerves. So this tells you how loud noises can actually hurt your hearing nerves. Little practice activity. Now, sound thresholds. This means how much pain you can take, or how much sound your ears can take. So you look down here, leaves rustling are 30 decibels, refrigerator 45, a hairdryer 80 decibels, then it goes up, jet engine taking off 140 decibels. So you can look at the different threshold of hearing, threshold of feeling, and threshold of pain. I don't know if I've ever had painful threshold of hearing. Different types of hearing loss, so read about the 3 different types. Temporary, permanent, and then acoustic trauma, which would be the worst. That's permanent hearing loss. Wearing protective gear, or earplugs that fit inside the ear, then earmuffs that are outside the ear. So safe amount of time, you can see that 115 decibels, which would be less than a jet engine. Less than 30 seconds is safe. Any more than that is going to hurt you. So this is a pretty nice gauge right here. So like really loud rock concert, you can go back to the other slide and it showed you how many decibels that was and how long you could stand it. Some practice, so go through the practice. Ergonomics, that's the science of designing the workspace. And of course you want to have a safe workspace. And that's not only the physical workspace, but also like the auditory workspace, your ears. Repetitive strain, when somebody does the same thing over and over. Usually that happens with your hands or your wrists. And here's some ergonomics for your computer and how to work at the computer better. So check your workspace, see if you're actually following some of these directions. If you go ahead and change some things, and maybe working at your computers will be a little bit better for you. So in lesson 6 we did all of these things, and let's go see if on the Class Connect write-up what we did. On the write-up, explain which part of the ear is most important in your opinion, so you can explain that, tell me why, explain how loud sounds damage the hearing nerves. So you're going to do all of that. So that's what you're doing for this week. You're going through, you're going to do the study questions, submit the study questions. Go back to the lesson. So you're going to go through that all those lessons and submit the study questions. That's all you're doing this week. Now for next week, you're going to wrap up this unit. You're going to do the quiz for next week, and you have the 2 assignments. You're welcome to go ahead and do those if you want to, but those will be part of the week 4 explanation that I'll create, the lesson recording. So that's all I have for this week. If you're still behind on week 2, week 1, get those caught up. Make sure you have the files set up on your computers so that you're ready to go. You've downloaded Audacity and all that works fine. Now the other thing, you'll notice that some of the questions that I have on the Class Connect write-up are similar to some of the study questions. No problem with that. Some are different, but this week you're going to turn in the Class Connect write-up and you're going to turn in the study questions. Okay, that's all I have for you. Look forward to your work coming in. Bye.